Our next guest is a marketing expert and the author of The Purpose Advantage. Well, this is good. It doesn't involve social media. Let's welcome Jeff Fromm. How you doing?
Hi, David. How are you?
Hey, tell us about your book.
All right. Well, Julia, my book is about how brands with a soul win with discerning consumers. The big myth is consumers are disloyal. They're not disloyal. They're discerning.
Discerning consumers. Yeah. What, you mean having a soul is important?
Well, let me say this. When the cost of doing good is low, brands that have a soul win. So it's one of those things where, you know what, maybe I have 3 or 4 choices and it's only an extra 50 cents or a buck to go with the brand that sort of aligns to my values. Yeah. And then if that's the case, why not?
Yeah.
But there is a certain point where if it's double the price, you might
Exactly. Appreciate you putting that in such a candid way, right?
Thank you.
Yeah. we like that. Now, according to Forbes and many other outlets we've read, millennials value a brand with a cause and purpose beyond profits. However, a lot of millennials feel you're just pandering to us. What do you think about that?
So, yes, that can be a problem. I call it purpose washing. So if you haven't taken actions in favor of a consumer first, then you could have a problem. However, when brands do it right, it's not purpose washing, and millennials are savvy. They can figure it out. That's why I say they're discerning. So brands like Chobani, brands like Seventh Generation, these brands have a soul, and consumers say, okay, I can see it. Other brands this year, like Pepsi or Gillette, have been sort of called out for purpose washing. And it's not that they didn't have the right intentions. They probably did, but you have to use purpose as a verb. Metaphorically, you have to take action. If what you do is advertise versus taking action.
Yep. And doesn't the landscape change all the time too? Like what was appropriate 2 years ago is not appropriate now. And we see companies stumble all the time with these types of issues.
Yeah, David, they do. And what happens is they're not listening to the consumer, and they're not showing their employees and their key stakeholders, here's what we're doing. And when you're not showing them that, what happens? Wow, people think, you're a phony, you're a fake. And so I think you're right, Julia, to your point, like they can figure it out, and they do. And so some companies get it right, and you've got companies that are getting it right, and some companies get it wrong. And it's often about the difference between taking action, using purpose as a verb, as opposed to, relying on just advertising your way out of something.
Yeah,
Perhaps
because we talked.
Yes,
please.
Copy.
I was going to say, like, we used to talk about
marketing genius.
Yeah, here we go.
Always give the talent the book, people.
Yes.
We have talked about a lot of politicians on the show, and while I don't want to get into politics, but I'm sure you and I can, and we collectively can think of a lot of politicians who say whatever they think their voting base want to hear, as opposed to really believing them, and over time they change their message. So for brands, or for anybody who wants to build something that's hopefully to be cultivated into a brand, how do you stay authentic? Because it's a fine line, right?
It is a fine line, and it's true for businesses and people. We have brands. You have a brand, Julia. You have a brand, David. I have a brand. We all have brands, right? Personal brand, corporate brand. For companies and the people who are running small businesses, the key part is to embed it into your business. And you have some high growth small companies getting it right. Right here in New York, you got Bombas, right? Started here in New York a couple years ago. They trying to tackle a homeless problem around socks. People who are homeless don't have socks. They built a wildly successful business by creating a product that has superior functionality and having a purpose. It's the intersection of better product and purpose that creates that path and that energy. And what happens? Consumers talk about it. So when you have something you love, you talk about it.
Oh yeah, you tell your friends.
You tell your friends. And so what you need, if you're a small business, is you need word of mouth and word of mouse.
Yeah.
And when you get word of mouth and word of mouse, you're going to win. And so
word of mouse.
Word of mouse.
What's that?
That's when people talk about it with their friends. I mean, look, if we had an amazing dinner tonight in New York or go out for drinks and you don't put it in your Instagram account, let me ask, does it even exist? Did we even have drinks?
You're worse than us, Jeff.
Yeah.
Right.
So what's your advice? A little bit of a departure here.
Yeah.
Writing a book.
Yeah.
Because a lot of us have great ideas. We have brands. Do you think a book is a good vehicle for your brand?
So I do think it is for your personal brand for sure. Writing a book's not easy. I'm not going to lie to anyone. spend more time on the outline than you can imagine, and the writing is easy. Spend
Really?
less time than you imagine, and the writing's hard. Because if you have a really tight outline, it's a story. In order to do this book, I did interviews for my Forbes column, and I published them. And I told people, once they're published, it's public domain. I then took all those interviews. The stories became the stories you'll read in the book. They're all right from the column, and voila.
That's interesting. I have interviewed many authors.
Yeah.
So has Julia, and I've never heard that advice.
Yeah. And I'm just curious. This publisher is not one of the top publishers, but it's something. So how did you find them, or how did they find you?
So the first 3 times I worked with traditional publishers doing hardback books, and what I found is traditional publishers are not the most viable path forward today for us. And so I used an indie publisher, basically in the self-publishing sphere. I speak professionally. I consult with clients through Barkley, the agency I work at. And so we self-published this book, and you can't tell.
Yeah.
Right? In fact, if you look at it,
it's
very well put
It's
together.
very well put together.
Yeah. In fact, if you looked at the big publisher books I've done in the past, like my most recent book was Marketing to Gen Z, it doesn't look as nice as this, because the big publisher wouldn't spend the money to.
Yeah, and it's I see blank lines here and everything.
Worksheets,
that's
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
after you're inspired by stories, it's go ahead, David, and make some notes about your path, your personal brand, and it's designed to be interactive that way. So it's a little bit of a departure for me, because my prior books are very much the traditional big publisher, hardback kind of book. But the small advances aren't worth what you give up. So if I was encouraging you to do one, I'd spend a ton of time on the outline, and I'd probably just fund it myself.
Okay.
Awesome, Jeff.
Thank you for that advice.
Yeah, no, that's actually very good advice.
Yeah.
I'm sure you both could easily do it with all the people that you meet.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much, Jeff, for joining us.
Oh, thank you.